Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Nicole Angelique Kerr. She's an award-winning health expert and is the author of You Are Deathless. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Roman. And I should also say aloha to you.
Yeah, that's a great place. Obviously, our off the interview conversation. But tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, I got to where I'm at today thanks to, I would say, a miracle, a divine intervention. I was pronounced dead at the scene of a car crash. I got to where I am today because I had an amazing medical team that could deal with trauma back in the 80s. And thanks to certain medical advances, I was able to save my foot and some other areas of my body that normally would not have been saved. And I've gotten to where I am today through transformation and working really hard on myself in the spiritual domain, in the emotional domain, in the mental domain. And of course, physically, I had to basically go from being in the top physical conditioning that I was ever in, which was being a cadet at the U.S. Air Force Academy back in the early 80s when women were just admitted. So I mean, I could have done the Ironman because you just train and train and train all the time. And I'm sure my conditioning helped me, recover from the accident. But I've also, um, just all of those factors, have working on that, having to walk again, having to use the bathroom again. I mean, basically going back to an infantile state and having to relearn all of that is very, very challenging and very hard because people are there for you when the accident or when a trauma happens, in the hospital, or if I was in the hospital 4 months. So, a lot of flowers, a lot of gifts, a lot of cards, a lot of people checking in on you. It's after that when you start going through rehab and you've only got you and your mom taking you to rehab and, applauding you when you can do 2 strokes in the water, that's the hard part when you're lacking the support. Everybody's gone on with their life. They know you're going to live, not necessarily how good you're going to live, but you're going to live, and they go on about their daily lives. So I think one of the things is don't forget about people just because they get out of the hospital. A lot of them have a long journey ahead of them in rehab.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things that most people in your life, if they find out something happened to you, regardless if it's, an accident or if it's a sudden illness, they'll come visit you once or twice. And like you said, they won't necessarily be there. I actually had this past summer, my grandmother passed away because all of a sudden she came in with a stomach pain to the doctor, and they said she had liver and pancreatic cancer and she only had a few weeks to live. So,
Mm.
I mean, we had those few weeks together. So, I saw her every day in the hospital. And then when she was discharged to hospice, but you don't necessarily know, how much time somebody has or how much time you have with somebody. And like you mentioned, it's tough, especially coming back from something and relearning something, having as many people as you can behind you, behind your corner, telling you that they're there for you, or doing something small like even stopping by for a minute or two, or even texting or calling or however communicating, it
Yeah.
really means a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I try to be mindful about that with other people now. It's just, and a lot of people are having this long haul COVID symptoms. They're not able to fully go back to work and they're fatigued a lot. And so whatever it is, it's causing them to have to stay home and not feel 100%. And that's a great opportunity to check in on someone, because it's depressing after a while when you don't start feeling better. And especially with COVID-19 long haul, they don't know. They're still trying to get the data on that and when things can turn for people or if they'll turn, So, it's kind of like Thanksgiving. It's not just one day of the week. It's something we should celebrate every day.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, humans are social creatures, regardless if you're extrovert or introvert, you still have those few amount of people that love hearing from or you stay connected to, and having that contact with someone really kind of can boost your day. And if you're obviously kind of compartmentalized in your own little space, not hearing from anyone, it kind of starts affecting your mental health in a way, because you do need that, I think, interaction as a human as well.
Yeah, you start spiraling down, and we're already dealing with an epidemic of anxiety and depression and PTSD, and your regulation with your nervous system for most people is really dysregulated. Let's just put it like that. But a little bit about my background. I grew up in the state of Mississippi. You ever heard of it?
Yeah, I learned how to spell it when I came to America. It's interesting spelling.
Did you learn the M-I crooked letter?
No,
Crooked
just
letter
like
I?
the MISSISIPPI,
Okay.
like that quick, and then it was just one time, and I learned how to spell it.
So I was raised there, and my dad was in the Marines. He had gone to the U.S. Air Force Academy and wanted one of the four kids to follow in his footsteps. And so I'm a people pleaser, and I think a lot of people, especially women, deal with this identity that they want to please. And by doing so, you start realizing that your needs are not getting met and you don't get appreciation. And at the end of the day, there's not a sense of reward or sense of fulfillment for you. You kind of feel like a roach stomped on you. So I grew up pleasing. I mean, that's what I did to get my dad's attention. And I decided out of the blue to go to the Air Force Academy. I had been modeling. I'd been doing all this other stuff in high school that did not prepare me for the military. Okay. I was not into airplanes, none of it. And I filled out the application. It's a really rigorous process to get accepted into any of the U.S. military academies. And I got a call in high school from the representative. They called me in the principal's office and said, "Congratulations, you're going to be in the class of 86. And I went, "Oh my God." I was shocked because, Roman, I didn't think I was going to make it. I really didn't. And I was stunned because now I was going to have to really do it. And I'm telling you, showing up for boot camp, I look like Private Benjamin. I don't know if you remember that movie, but it was like, fire a weapon. Oh my gosh. I blew the base off the target. I was just not ready for the abuse either. And it's a mentally abusive place, physically abusive. And when you started adding women, the sexual abuse piece came into it. And I knew it 3 weeks into it in boot camp that my soul was in the wrong place. And I can tell you that because we got 1 3-minute phone call home. Okay. We didn't have cell phones back then. And you got one call there was 6 weeks of boot camp at that 3-week break to call home. My mother answered the phone. And I just cried when I heard her voice. And for 3 minutes, I could not get a word out. I was hyperventilating. And the commander came over, took the phone away, hung up, and said, "Kerr, get over there and get yourself together." And I didn't realize it till years later that was my first panic attack. I couldn't talk. And my mother told me years later, she said, I looked at your father. I said, "What have we done to her?" And he's like, "Oh, she'll be fine." But I wasn't fine. I went from there to remedial. Okay. Cause I was always running in the back of the pack. I'm 5'11". I didn't play varsity sports. So my conditioning was not like most of the athletes that were there. And so I really had a hard time the first year. But the second year is when the accident happened. And that was at the beginning of the year. And things were getting harder, even though I had gotten to be into the cadet ranks. You're out of that first freshman year being hazed all the time and you get some privileges. But I was at the beginning of we were doing a squadron softball game to kick off the school year. And people were drinking. The Air Force provided beer. And needless to say, I asked a guy for a ride back who was a senior. And so he said, sure. And we were the last to leave. And he wanted to stop by a bar and get a couple more beers. And I was really conscious that we had to be back by 7:35 or we would get in trouble. I mean, that's always the military. You have to be on time. And so I remember the bartender saying, hey, are you okay to drive? And he was like, yeah. So we got in the car in his shiny red Corvette convertible. And I was just glad to be out having fun, because the academy is not about having fun. It's about discipline. It's about, every day, every hour is scheduled for you. And so then he said, you want to go watch the sunset? And I have to say, Roman, I was brought up really sheltered in a really religious household. So I'd never been on a date. And now I'm going to school with 4,000 guys. And my dad's rules were no smoking, no drinking, and no dating cadets, which were totally, when I look back on it, that's just ridiculous. But, that's what he said. So I started going, I think this guy had an alternate agenda. So I'm like, we got to go. So next thing I remember, I woke up in the ICU at the hospital, and I only remember seeing bright white lights. That was it. And I tried to figure out what that was. Was that the hospital lights? Was that the operating room? And turns it out it was a near-death experience. And my memory of that came back 19 years later when I was working in Atlanta for the Centers for Disease Control. I went to Starbucks, I got my usual, and then clear as day, I got back in my car and I could remember how I was sitting in the car. And I know now why I cut my foot off, and I know why I damaged all the insides of my legs, and I severed my wrist and had a really bad road burn on my face, and was in the hospital for 4 months, 7 weeks in ICU. They did not think I was going to make it. I was pronounced dead at the scene. They estimate I was clinically dead 10 to 15 minutes. It was a EMT that came and took a look at me after they'd covered me up and did a sternal knuckle press, and the right pupil dilated in my eye. That was the only vital they could get. And if you believe in your soul, okay, what do people say about your eyes in that relationship with your soul? Your
That
eyes
it's
are
like a gateway or
the windows to the soul,
yeah.
right? Okay. So at that moment, my soul came back through my eye, and they were able to get me going again. And they got me to the nearest community hospital, which was not a trauma hospital. And they basically just tried to, that night, just get me stable. My blood pressure was 60 over 0. Through that course, I had to have 64 pints of blood. That's like redoing your system 8 times. Numerous operations, 2 code blues, where I was just gone. And then all of a sudden my heart stops again. So there was a reason for sure that I was meant to stay here. And that reason came to me 19 years later when my memory came back. And I remember going to the other side. And what happened was, I remember going through the windshield of the car, butt up first, because of the way I was, my legs were on the dashboard. And incidentally, I did not know this. That's the worst way to sit in a car, is with your feet on the dashboard or your feet hanging out of the car, or one foot there and the other one crossed over. You will have more injuries if you do that. So please, people, keep your feet on the floor in a car. So anyway, I remember when I got to a certain point, I was going up, and I knew when I was going to go, when I was going to fall, that I was going to be dead. And I just knew it. And so my soul flew out of me at that moment when I flew out of the car before I hit the ground. So I did not feel any of the pain associated with actually hitting the pavement and, quote, dying. My soul went up with this angel that took me up, who later I figured out was my grandfather, and on my father's side. And I went to this place that was the beauty of it. You can't even describe it. I heard other voices. I was not in a human form. Nobody up there is in a human form. And I heard people, I don't know if it was English or what language, but I could understand it. And they were telling people to ask for help, meaning the humans on earth need to ask the angelic realm for help. They're not going to interfere with our lives unless we ask for help, unless it's an emergency like my situation was. So that's one message for the audience, is to ask the angels for help. And I know people laugh about asking the angels for parking spaces, but it doesn't matter what the degree is. It works, and they will provide. And so they are waiting to be asked. So please ask your angelic realm for help for whatever it is that you need. And the second message was, I was told I was coming back, and I was like, no, I don't do not want to go back. I could see my body in the ditch. I could see what I was wearing, the teal colored Azad shirt, polo shirt, the khaki shorts. And I was like, I don't want to get back in that body because it's going to be nothing but pain and suffering. And the angel told me, Nicole, you've got a message to give to people, and it's to not fear death. And I thought, okay, that's a pretty big message. And how in the world am I supposed to do that? And I was like, okay. I mean, I didn't have a choice. And that's why I have an angel that called James that really does protect me. He has been the one that has helped me stay the course, to stay alive. He's worked so hard to keep me from going back to the other side, so that I could get this message out. And it's taken me 40 years. Okay. So my memory didn't come back for almost 20. And then I remembered it. And then it was another 20 for me to align myself, to really understand what my soul is and what does a relationship with your soul look like. I was very much cut off from my mind and my body. I did not get any mental health. My mother told the doctor that when he suggested that I have some mental health counseling, she told him that Jesus and God were our psychologist, and that I was fine. And I wasn't fine, Roman. I had an eating disorder set in 4 months after I went to live with my sister. And it was because I was just pushing down all the pain. And that eating disorder lasted almost 20 years till I got married. And it's, for anybody out there with an eating disorder, you know how secretive it is, you know how shame-based it is. And you hate yourself. You really do. You're disgusted that you say, okay, I'm not going to do it again. 2023, January 1st, I'm not going to binge again, or I'm not going to restrict, or I'm not going to whatever it is. And you can't do it. And it's like, it's not a willpower issue. You have got to get to the source of that pain and resolve that trauma wound that is causing you to use the food to not go there.
So you said the memory of what happened came to you several years after the fact. Was there anything that brought about it, like an event or a trigger or something that like tied to it? It just came to you out of nowhere?
I thought it was caffeine, but no. And then I went to my chiropractor who does body work, and he was telling me it's repressed memories. Okay. And when you go through a trauma, your body will repress memories. Mm-hmm. And then when you feel safe enough, your body feels safe, your mind is safe, your emotional state, your body will allow those to come up. So I guess that point, I had done a lot of work on myself. I was going through counseling. I was going through group therapy, all kinds of stuff, chiropractic, Reiki, anything like that I could do to try to help me connect to my body and embody the emotions instead of, oh, I think I'm angry. Yeah, I think I'm angry. That's the appropriate emotion. I'm angry at you, Roman, for doing X, Y, Z. You're not embodying it. You're just intellectualizing it. And there's a big difference. And your body over the years, if you don't get in touch with those emotions, it will present physically in dis-ease. And it'll be things that a lot of times the doctors will say, your blood test, everything is normal. I don't know what's going on. And it's usually something, a stressor related to something in your past that you never cleared, and you're still feeling shame about it, or betrayed or angry. It wasn't very nice in the South for girls to get angry at guys or anybody. Anger didn't look good on women. And so you get taught to not hurt other people's feelings. And you certainly don't hurt your mother's feelings or your dad's feelings, so it's about the emotions, and we are a very illiterate country when it comes to emotions. We pretty much grow up with 4: bad, sad, mad, and glad. And I think it's really hard for men, especially, to start expanding that buffet to really embody emotions like betrayal or over concern or, resentment or whatever it is, and to really own it and feel it and be able to express it appropriately instead of just keeping it in.
Yeah, I agree. What happened to the driver of the vehicle?
Well, his blood alcohol was well over the limit of 0.10 in Colorado at the time. So he was faced with the state of Colorado charged him with vehicular assault, DUI, speeding, and reckless driving. He was a senior cadet. He was in the hospital a week. He had some injuries on his back. And then because his dad wore 3 stars and was head of the Army Corps of Engineers at the time, made one call to the superintendent at the academy and said, I don't care what happens to my kid. He's a senior and he's going to graduate. And that is where rank has its privileges. And it's just caused me to have such a sense of justice. My favorite show is Law and Order because I want that justice, because I didn't get it with him, and it's like any other cadet would have been kicked out for that, there wouldn't have even been a shred of evidence that he could present to keep him there. But this guy was able to do it, and he went back into the cadet wing and he finished his year and went on to, have his Air Force career. And I don't speak with him. He never, in my estimation, apologized to me. And I turned out he was an alcoholic. And so, I think that's one of the things that I had to struggle with. And then I find out, this is in the epilogue of the book, You Are Deathless. I had 3 other female roommates in my squadron. Okay. And I had not talked to one of them in 38 years. And I got a Zoom together in May, right before the book was going to press. And she got on it. I found her on Facebook. And the first thing, she quit the academy in that December. Okay. And she just left and never told anybody why. And so when I saw her, she just started crying and she said, I'm so sorry, Nicole. I said, for what? She goes, I caused the accident. And I said, what do you mean? You didn't cause it. Nate was drunk and he caused it, And she said, no. She said, we had an agreement. We were going to ride back together. I was going to, take you back. And I got with this other guy and he was drunk, and needless to say, I wanted to be alone with him. So I told you to go over there to that guy, and you told me that he was drinking and that you didn't feel comfortable doing that. And you said, oh, Nicole, they've all been drinking. It'll be okay. Just go have some fun. And I thought, okay, she said, I'll see you back at the academy. And she never did. And so that haunted her, Roman, for 38 years. And I didn't remember that. And she never said anything to me the whole time she came to visit me in the hospital. But she wound up just the guilt of her. She said, our lives would be totally different if I would have just kept my word and taken you back. I didn't know the guy was going to go to a bar and have 2 more beers. But still, I feel responsible. And she went and lived her life in Vermont, never got married, just really sad because 2 people really became victims in that, and based on, one guy's decision. And I think it's really, when I heard that, I was just like, okay, I didn't just get in the car with some drunk guy. I knew that he had been drinking. And, I had a plan to go back with somebody else. And I, for the first time in my life, was trying to go, I'm going to have some fun. And I just got slapped down big time, And so my parents basically, they blamed me. They said, you didn't follow our rules, and therefore you didn't follow God's rules. And so you deserved it. And even when I told them as recently as May, when this came out, no, this is my roommate. I had a plan with her, and she was the one that encouraged me to go with Nate. And my dad, this is the hard ass kind of person he is. He's like, you still made a bad decision and you should have walked home. And I was just like, screw you, and I haven't talked to him since, and I probably never will, because he's a narcissist and he can't admit that he made the wrong decision. I mean, why would you want in the first place your daughter to go to a place that is abusive?
Yeah, I mean, the whole file. I haven't spoken to my dad since 2008, or saw him in person. I mean, he'll send me a birthday card, a blank birthday card, and a text on my birthday, but that's about it. So, I mean, sometimes for your own, I guess, mental well-being, if you can't change someone, obviously, or have them come to the realizations themselves that, their perspective or kind of their, I guess, view on something isn't necessarily the correct one. And if you can't obviously get around that, sometimes it's tough to continue a relationship, whether it's, a parent, a sibling, or a friend.
Yeah. And, at least in the South growing up, it's family is everything. Family will always be there for you. Blood is thicker than water. All these messages about your family. So, it is really difficult to realize not one, but both of your parents, because my mother does absolutely everything my dad says. They believe absolutely the same thing. And they're today what I would call a religious addict. Everything God told them to do this. So they never take responsibility for anything because God spoke to them to do this, that, or the other. So you can't ever win in that argument. And all I can say is, God, I was raised with being Southern Baptist and Lutheran. That was not the God I experienced on the other side. The God I experienced on the other side was pure love, period. And the bright white energy, light that people talk about that I saw, it's not blinding. It's like a clear light. But if you think about what I saw, where there was all these different colors, colors that aren't in existence here on earth, even though we have so many beautiful colors, and the color white absorbs all color, right? So if you're in that, you're in all this beauty, is what the way I can describe it. And I felt like I was like in this chrysalis, and I was just held. And, I never made a mistake. There was no judgment, everything was like wiped away. And I felt a love that you can't even imagine, because growing up, we're human and we put conditions on love, whether we think we do or don't. Most of us have some layer of a condition on love. I think the best example of unconditional love is usually some of our pets, our fur babies or feather friends or whatever, they just are happy to see us no matter what. So that blissness I felt, why in the world did I want to come back and suffer with, migraines, intestinal issues, limitations physically, all that kind of stuff. But I know today that putting this message out, and this book took me 13 years to write. Okay. It is from my heart. I was honest. I was vulnerable. I talk about, my eating disorder, which is something people looked at me because I went into nutrition because I thought I could figure out why I had an eating disorder and fix it. I think a lot of people go into professions to try to fix themselves, usually in the service ones. but realized it was mental, it didn't matter how much I knew about nutrition and food. It wasn't ever going to help the pain. So, I'm calling myself now, it's a vocation. I'm an eternality advocate, meaning your soul, it never dies. And that's why I say you are deathless, is your soul lives on and on and on. When people die, that breath, that vapor leaves you, and it's just your physical body remaining, but that goes on and on and on. And it's beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful.
So what's kind of the biggest thing you want people to take away? One thing they can take away from the book that you hope for them to learn or take with them from reading it?
I would love for you guys, most people unconsciously fear death. And so, especially if you're raised in a religious family where God was punishing and punitive, and you were going to hell if you didn't do all these rules, but yet he was also loving. So a lot of times you may think that you have gotten away from that, but it's still embedded in you somewhere in your unconscious. So to look at your fears, and there's even a checklist of fears that when you think about your own death, and there's book club discussions. So it's really what I'm trying to do is to get us away for seeing death as doom and gloom and negative, and to see it as something beautiful, and that where we go is beautiful, and that we never die. We're not alone. These 10 common positive themes that come out of years of research with people like me that have had near-death studies. And so it's just, I hope to give you hope in this book that in death, you go on and on and on, and you will see your loved ones, and they're not going to have Alzheimer's or any of these diseases, because we're not in a physical form. That's all like gone. And so, I think we knew it to do a better job raising kids here about exposing them to death early and being honest with them when someone dies, what happens, because you never know. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. None of us. I didn't think I was going to die at 19. And I certainly, had a friend that died at 17. Nobody thought she would either. So it happens, and we need to deal with it. Yes, we're human. So we need to be able to grieve and surround those emotions with compassion. But we also need to look at the bigger picture, the benevolence, what that means, and I think for $9.99 to get this book, I think it is well worth it over a venti soy latte.
That's awesome. I appreciate you stopping by. Can you let the audience know how they can find you, where they can find the book, or more about you?
Sure. I have my own website, and it's www.NicoleKerr, all one word, NicoleKerr.com. And I also, and on there, you can email me and I could send you the first chapter of the book. It talks about the accident and the intro, what I hope that you get out of it. It's not a prescription. It is my journey, and it is some things that I think you can take away and think about and discuss with your family, and not make it such a taboo subject. I'm on Facebook, Nicole Angelique Kerr. I'm on Instagram, same thing. I'm on LinkedIn, and those are all I can manage because I'm doing this solo. I just can't do any more social media than that. But if you do a book club, I'm happy to join in, depending on the time zone, for about 30 minutes of your book club, and actually talk to your book club about what you read. And it makes a great Christmas gift, because it really does help you think about the positive with death. And we need to prepare ourselves, and not be resistant to it, because it's going to happen to all of us.
I agree. Thanks again for stopping by.
Well, thank you so much, Roman, and happy holidays to you.
You too.